burnout. We are so excited to be in this sermon series with you. I was just talking to someone because this is so relevant to so many of us. I feel like there is no one who has worked who hasn't hit the end of themselves and had to beat burnout. So I am so excited to learn alongside of you. I have some really exciting things that we want to include you on today. So the first one is Halloween is coming up and we are doing trunk or treat. But this is going to look different than we have in years past. But first of all, I want to let you know we're actually doing trunks. So we're going to have, it's going to be outside. We're going to have trunks popped. We're going to have volunteers decorating the trunks, dressing up. So that is new and exciting. And if you want to volunteer, we would love for you to volunteer. There is a way that you can do that. You can, if you're a Wheatfield person, if you could email Elise, so ALYCE at first.church, she will hook you up. Or if you're a Hebrew peep, you can email me. It's Kristen, KRISTIN at first.church. We would love to get you to volunteer. Otherwise, if you just want to donate candy, that is the easiest way to volunteer. I was just texting someone last night. They're like, yeah, I can't make it, but I can bring candy. And I'm like, yes. So if you just want to drop off candy, our office hours at both locations, for sure, 9 to 3. If you drop it off Monday through Friday, 9 to 3, we are here. We will gladly receive that candy, or you can bring it in on Sundays during any of our service times. We would love some candy. But also something I want you to know is the time. So this is going to look different than maybe the trick-or-treat hours of your county. So both locations, we are doing it on Halloween. So October 31st from 5 to 7 p.m. So this is really exciting because I know that Wheatfield Dumont trick-or-treating is going to be on Saturday. So now, mamas, we get more bang for our buck with our Halloween costumes we bought for our kids. I am genuinely excited because not only you could go trick-or-treating on Saturday night if that's the hours in your community, but then we have something to do on Sunday with our families and celebrate again. I know that my family is going to do both nights. I'm so excited. Or if you worked on Saturday or Saturday doesn't work out, I know that there are so many families who have shift work. Sunday, we're trick-or-treating, baby. So we would love to see you at Hebron or Wheatfield from 5 to 7 p.m. It is going to be fantastic. And this is not official, but I'm going to try to pull some strings. I really want there to be some friendly competition. So if you, I will let you know next week if it's actually going down. But I'm really pulling that for each location, we're going to have like best costume, best trunk, and then best overall. And then my hope and dream is to have Wheatfield versus Hebron, best overall, compete online and actually vote. So then there's like an ultimate trunk winner. So if you're doing a trunk, I want you to do your best. I want you to be in it to win it because I am pulling that we're going to have some prizes and some competition, baby. Because I had someone come up to me and at their work, they compete. And I'm like, why don't we compete at church? So, to be continued. I will let you know next week if that is actually a thing. But we are so excited. So whether you are going to volunteer at it, donate candy to it, or bring your family, again, we are doing trunk or treat on Halloween, 5 to 7, both locations. It is going to be amazing, and I cannot wait to see you there. It's going to be so much fun. So other things that we have going on. So we have a Kickstart class happening in Hebron. And I think this is something that we haven't talked about a lot. So maybe that's new. Maybe you've been here for a really long time and you're like, I've been here for 5 years and I don't know what you're talking about. Our Kickstart class is kind of like, this is a bad analogy, but kind of an equivalent to confirmation. That's the word. I didn't grow up in church. So confirmation, that's the word. So where you have your kids take this class so that they are ready to profess their faith, if that's where they're at. So if you have students who are ready to become owners, profess their faith, or possibly get baptized, you want them in this Kickstart class. It's 3 classes, and it's once a month at both locations on different dates. So all that to say, the next Kickstart class is happening in Hebron on October 17th, and it's during our second service. So it's during the 10:30 service back in Kids Wing. So again, if you have students and they haven't told you about it, if you want to ask them, see if it's something they're interested in, it is really beneficial. And even if they're not ready to become an owner or get baptized, it's just really good information about why we believe what we believe, and I think they could really benefit from it. So October 17th in Hebron. If you are a Hebron person, we'd love to see you there. And then one of my favorite things is coming up, baptisms and professions. It's the last ones of the year. These are my favorite Sundays more than holidays. I genuinely love baptisms and profession Sundays. So October 24th, you're going to want to make sure to tune in or come live and in person October 24th, because we want to give all these people making profession and becoming owners just big, rowdy support. I love the part where the church stands up and says, hey, we're going to support you in this. We are teaming with you. So October 24th, both locations. I think all services, genuinely, we have, if not professions or baptisms, we have baby dedications. So at both our locations, we would love for you to be live and in person. If you can, if you have something on the schedule, join us online. We would love for you to be cheering them on from online. And most importantly, we would love your prayers. If you would be praying for these people as they're making these next steps, as they are, really committing to be a part of this church. If you pray for their faith, if you pray for their commitment, and you'd pray that they would become pillars in this community and in the faith, we would really, really appreciate it. But if you just jumped on and you're like, wait, when is it? October 24th is when we have baptisms and professions. And also, if you just jumped on, I want to introduce myself. My name is Kristen. I am Pastor John's wife. I am also the Hebron Campus Director, and we are in the very first sermon in our new sermon series, Beating Burnout, and it's going to be amazing. And I was just talking to a coworker earlier. I feel like this is going to be applicable to everyone, and even if you've never worked, man, I wish that I would hear something like this before I went into the workforce. So grab your family, grab your coffee, get your notes and your pencil. Gonna take some notes. It's gonna be a really, really great sermon. A couple things that we always like to share with you, because we want you to be included in on our community. If you want updates on happenings coming up, we would love for you to text your location to 474747. So if you're Wheatfield, we would love for you to text Wheatfield to 474747, or if you're Hebron, we would love for you to text Hebron to 474747. And that's just a texting service that we text you about communion or about baptisms, professions. I don't know if we did sisterhood. Not sisterhood, maybe brotherhood. I feel like that would be awesome. But things like that that are coming up, we love to just let you know, hey, this is going on. And honestly, we barely text once a month. So if you're like, I don't want to be spammed, I already get enough in my email. No, I promise you, it's just the really important things that we don't want you to miss out on, that we will send you a text about. Trunk or treat, baby. We'll be texting you about that. But anyways, again, if you want to be included in on that, if you would text your location, so Wheatfield or Hebron, to 474747, we would love for you to get those texts from us. And then also, I'm wearing my life group shirt today, but we just had an incredible life group Sunday a couple weeks back. And if that sparked some things in your heart and you've been thinking about it, tossing it around, we would love for you to join a life group. If you go on our website, first.church, there's a big black button that says join a life group. You can look at all of the life groups that we offer there, the times, the locations, if they're for men, women, children welcome, children not welcome. And a life group is a group of people where you do life together. You grow in your faith, grow in your relationships with one another. It is an awesome thing to be a part of. So again, if you want to join a life group, just check out the website, first.church, click on that life group button, and we would love to hook you up. We're about to go into service. And so I'm going to pop off your screen in a couple seconds, and then we're going to go into a countdown. Then we're going to have some worship. We would love for you to join us in worshiping God through singing. And then Pastor John is going to preach an incredible message, and then I'm going to bop back on your screen and leave you with a couple things. But until then, thank you so much for joining us today. We are so glad you're a part of our church, and I'll see you afterwards. Bye, fam.
Is it the motivation to get out of bed? How about money or love? We're always searching for something. Sometimes it's power, sometimes it's truth, freedom, or equality. But if you take a step back and examine what's going on, you'll see how much that missing thing changes. And if that's always changing, it will always be missing. Jesus Christ is the same yesterday, today, and forever. He brings peace, purpose, joy, truth, and freedom. Jesus brings victory over sin, death, and Satan. All we want and all we need is found in Him.
Good morning, church. Let's go ahead and stand up and worship together. We're reaching out to welcome you, God. Fill this place again with your song. Flood our thoughts with wonder and awe. Give us a grace, an ever-changing God. All we want Church, you can be seated.
Mrs. Wabash loved watching the family pet. Fluffy loved Mrs. Wabash too, but hated car rides. To console the poor animal, Mrs. Wabash often let him ride in the trunk. As she pulled into the driveway, she could hear Fluffy's anxious whines. Upon opening the trunk, she was greeted by not one, but two friendly faces. The second being the trunk-or-treat man.
You guys know it already, but Trunk or Treat is happening in 3 Sundays, and we can't contain our excitement. And here's the great thing about this year. Not only is it Halloween and it's Trunk or Treat happening again, but it's on a Sunday. So make sure to let your friends know that go to the 6 p.m. service. They need to come to one of these morning services because we will be doing Trunk or Treat that evening right here from 5 to 7. And it's going to be happening at our Hebron location too, which is so cool. But for those of you who haven't experienced a trunk or treat, this one is going to be like none other you've seen before. There's even going to be some really cool stuff for you parents. So it's not just going to be all about the candy for your kids this year. There's going to be some cool prizes that you parents can win as well. So put that on your calendar. And if you have the opportunity to volunteer, we would love for you to help out this year. So if you can, sign up at the welcome desk today before you leave church. And I will personally call you and get you hooked up with a trunk or with greeting or doing something really fun for that event. But we also would love for you guys to grab your Connect cards. So if you could, grab them off your seats, fill them out. If it's your very first time, welcome. We would love to be able to send you a little gift in the mail this week. So check that first time box and we'll send you something special. But you guys can hand those to the ushers as you leave after service is over. But as you guys do fill those out, we also have an opportunity to go into a time of giving as we continue to worship. And so the giving team's going to come forward and you can give that way or online to participate in all the ways God is moving in and through our community and our church. So as we do that, will you guys stand and worship?
And how I long to breathe the air of heaven, where pain is gone and mercy fills the streets, to look upon the one who bled to save me and walk with him for all eternity. There will be a day when all will bow before him. There will be a day when death will be no more, standing face to face with he who died and rose again. Holy, holy is the Lord. And every prayer, beside the heroes of the faith. With one voice, 1,000 generations sing, worthy is the Lamb who was slain. And on that day, we join the resurrection and stand beside the heroes of the faith. With one voice, 1,000 generations sing, worthy is the Lamb who was slain. Forever he shall reign. Oh, so let it be today. We shout the hymn of heaven with angels and the saints. We raise a mighty roar. Glory to our God, who gave us life beyond the grave. Holy, holy is the Lord. Let it be today that we shout the hymn of heaven with angels and the saints. We raise a mighty roar. Sing glory to our God, who gave us life beyond the grave. Holy, holy is the Lord. Holy, holy is the Lord. Holy, holy is the Lord. Amen. Church, you can go ahead and be seated.
Man, I still love that bump. That's great. That's exciting. Welcome to church. Welcome those of you watching online and, of course, at our Jasper County Jail campus. Welcome. Hebron, welcome. We're celebrating 1 year since Practice Church began up there. That's pretty cool. And, of course, DeMont Wheatfield, it's great to be here with you guys. Thank you for joining us. This is a place where no one's perfect and everyone's welcome. And it's a place where growing people change and become more like Jesus. I think it's also one of the last places in America where different people from different backgrounds who disagree can come together and be united by what we're for instead of what we're against. And I think our society needs many more places like church. And our goal is to present Jesus in a way that is faith-building and growth-inducing for Christians, but also in a way that somebody who has never been to church before can be intellectually challenged and maybe even find faith for themselves. Because here's the thing. Jesus never asked for blind faith. And growing up, I thought you just had to believe. You just had to close your eyes and believe. But when you read the Bible, you see Jesus always gave evidence through his power and presence, and then he called people to believe. And that's what we want to do. We want to show you evidence through the power and presence of God, and then call you to believe. We're in a brand new teaching series called Beating Burnout. And I hope you guys had a good week. I had a crazy week. I had a good week, but it was crazy. It was a lot. You know, I knew it was going to be a crazy week because, you know, Zachary was going to be gone. And so then I had to run both nights of Next Gen, and I had a couple of weddings this weekend. And, you know, we have the Hebron 1-year anniversary celebration coming up later today. It's just a lot going on, and I thought, oh, it's going to be a lot. Then half of our staff was out on COVID quarantine or COVID. And it was like, oh, my goodness, this is going to be crazy. So I feel like it's a perfect time to be talking about beating burnout. And, you know, as a church, we don't just want to give you pithy one-liners that you can put on your Finsta. We want to give you real, intellectual, and heart understandings of the truth of Jesus that'll transform the way that you live. And, you know, I don't just want to see a church full of, like, rich, expository, verse-by-verse, inductive Bible understanding and preaching, whatever else. Because the goal isn't to just know the Bible. The goal is to be transformed by what God calls us to live within it. And this week's message, and because of that, what we do is we do our messages in series. And this week's message would be really a part of a 2-hour-long seminar. What I've done, it's not 2 hours, don't worry if it's your first time. We've cut it down into bite-sized sections, about 30 minutes each week for 4 weeks. And today is just the beginning, right? It's just the appetizer, just the chips and salsa. Main course doesn't come till next week. And this week, I'm not even going to talk about how to beat burnout. I just want to talk about what it is. Beating burnout comes next week. And of all areas of faith, I think for a younger generation in particular, this is possibly the biggest area of struggle. Everybody in the younger generation seems to be talking about burnout. And if you don't know what it is, it's defined as a state of emotional, physical, and mental exhaustion caused by excessive and prolonged stress. It occurs when you feel overwhelmed, emotionally drained, and unable to meet constant demands. And according to a recent Gallup poll, some 44% of the American workforce struggles with burnout. And that's kind of shocking. So if you don't struggle with burnout, somebody you love almost certainly does. And what we're going to do in this series is we're going to talk in week 1 about what it is. Then I want to talk about why it happens, how to beat it, and how to help others beat it. And as I always tell people in series, this week's written in Sharpie, all these other weeks are written in light pencil. But that's probably what's going to happen. It's just a general forecast. You know, it's like the weather. It's like, is it going to be this way? I hope so. I'm just a pastor trying to make my way in the world, right? But today, I'll tell you what we're going to do. We're going to tell a story. We're going to look at the Bible. And then after that, I want to challenge you to reflect on your own life. And here's the big goal today. The big goal is that you will have clarity on the degree to which you struggle with burnout. And the hope is you'll leave with an understanding that God loves you, cares about you, and understands burnout. Let's start with a quick story. I don't know how many of you like to camp. I did a lot of camping in my early 20s. Probably a little over half a year of my life was spent in a tent. And I worked for multiple wilderness companies and outfitters. One of the companies I worked for is called Expeditions Unlimited, and that's a company we use to send our kids to camp in the summer, movement camp and otherwise. It's a great place to be. I really like them. Another company, the first company I worked for, was Ridiculous. And I will not say its name because I'm going to talk about them, and, you know, I don't want to throw shade. But the things that they would do with kids, that we would do with kids, was just nuts. We would send 5th graders into the wilderness with backpacks and literally no tents. We would send them into the wilderness for a week with mosquito nets, tarps, and twine. And be like, yeah, we're going to go, and each day we're going to build shelter between trees. No toilet paper, just a shovel and leaves. Nothing makes a 5th grader love camping more than having a horrible experience, right? And we would put 20 to 50-pound backpacks on these little tiny boys and go off in the wilderness. No mosquito spray, no firewood, no GPS, no phones, no toilet paper, just a map and a compass. Doing it for real. And we would make them navigate. Yeah, you got to figure it out or we're lost. And it's like I would watch the kids navigate in the wrong direction and be like, well, it's going to be a rough night. You know what I mean? And to the shock of nobody, this company is no longer in business. Obviously, what's the Wi-Fi password generation kind of killed that. But the best part of the day, when you're doing this kind of camp and, you know, you do your 10-mile deal, which is a lot. When you're carrying a backpack and you're in 5th grade, it's a lot. But you do your 10 miles. The best part of the day is the campfire. I love a good campfire. To this day, that is what I miss the most. I love the smell of it. I love the feelings that it elicits. But the campfire is really important when you're backpacking because obviously, if you backpack, you know the campfire is what you use to boil your water, right? And to boil water, as you know, if you're backpacking, you need to gather a large pile of brush, sticks, and twigs from the forest around you. And I would always tell my groups, we need to get a pile the size of a small car. Right, like Hyundai Elantra, you know, we do that, Toyota Corolla, like that size. We're not talking like cars around here like F-150 too big, okay? Just give you an idea of the size. Okay, sticks, twigs, not logs, because we don't have chainsaws. We don't have gasoline, right? You just got to get, and then once you get your big pile, you'd have to feed the fire, right? Break the stick, take the bark off it to get it started, little twigs, you know, put it on the fire and whatever, and you just feed it all night. And all day, you'd ration your water, and you'd be so thirsty. If you've done hard backpacking, you know what I'm talking about. And you get to your camp, and you'd look around, and somebody'd be like, I found it. And it'd be like a little tiny mud puddle, right? And you take the water, and you put it in a coffee can with your sweaty bandana over the top to, like, filter the water, because that works great, right? We're filtering the water and whatever else, or a bog or whatever. And, you know, you'd see all the chotch on top of the bandana, and you'd be like, yeah, the filter worked great. It's totally pure. And then you put it in the fire, and all the horseflies, you know, would fly around, and when they go over the steam kills them instantly, and they fall into your coffee can of water. And, you know, you'd boil that water for 100 seconds. You count up, and then you take that 160-degree water, you know, let it cool down for a little bit, and you put it in your Nalgene's. And I would drink that hot water, same temperature as coffee, on a sweltering 90-degree evening. after backpacking all day, and it'd be the best thing, best water I'd ever tasted in my life. You know what I mean? Like, it'd be so good because you were so parched. You wanted it so bad. And you'd just be sitting there in your sweat being like, oh, yeah, it's best. Better than coffee, better than anything else. And, you'd rehydrate your dinner because obviously you use dehydrated food for dinner. You'd eat your 7,000 calories of just pure carb, like absolutely the worst food you've ever tasted. But it'd be so good, because you were so hungry. And the best part of the day was the last 45 minutes. You know why? Because your water was done, your food was cooked, and you just sit around the glowing coals. You know what I mean? And if the day went right, the fire never burned out. You'd go to sleep around the warm fire, but the flames would be gone, but the coals would just be there heaped. And the next morning, you could cook breakfast from the coals. You just blow on them and put a little more wood, and the fire would start up again. And it was great, though, at night, the last 45 minutes. No more work to do. If it was a moonless night, you'd see all the stars, and it was just some of my best memories, really good. I remember a few days where things did not go well, though. Some days, there just wasn't enough wood. And, our base at that company was in northern Wisconsin, and all the campsites around base, we would have this problem a lot because you didn't bring wood. You'd have to just strip the dead wood out of the forest. And if there was another group that had been there a few weeks before you, then you wouldn't have any wood to gather. And that's a bad thing, because if you don't have enough wood to burn, what happens? Your fire burns out before everything's done. And you end up sitting in the dark, dejected and helpless, after working as hard as you could, knowing that you didn't get to where you needed to be. You're slowly falling behind, slowly failing, didn't get enough water, didn't get enough food. And that's what burnout feels like. To try as hard as you can all day long, to carry a load on your back, yearning to make camp, yearning for that evening rest, and to get there, and instead of getting that rest, you end up cold at night, sitting in the dark, thirsty, hungry, and empty. And you go to bed, and you wake up the next morning hungry, thirsty, lonely, and tired. When we're burning out, the fire in our hearts, they just don't have enough wood to burn. And we get back to our homes, and you know that sound of your keys. You put your keys on the bedside table, and you just wonder, what did I even do all day? Is this going to be the rest of my life? You ever ask yourself that question? I feel so empty, so purposeless. What am I even doing? I'm falling behind. I'm lonely. I'm thirsty. I'm hungry. I'm tired. There are two kinds of burnout. There's high-key burnout. There's low-key burnout. High-key burnout is what everybody thinks about when they think of burnout. It's like you're going too hard all day long. High-key burnout is very rare. Almost nobody experiences high-key burnout. This is what everybody thinks, I'm just doing too much. Nobody really suffers from this. High-key burnout is when you're running on adrenaline for years, 16 hours a day, 7 days a week for years. Almost everybody thinks they're burning out because they're doing too much. High-key burnout ultimately results in body shutdown and organ failure, can even result in death. Very few people experience it. Some do. In this whole church, maybe 2 or 3 people have actually experienced this. It takes months, if not years, to recover from. It's a big deal. Most people experience something different. They experience low-key burnout. And it's not that you're doing too much. It's that you don't have enough fuel to make the fire in your heart burn. Low-key burnout is slowly failing over the long term. You're working real hard. You're doing everything you know how to do, and you're just treading water. You're getting a little bit deeper and deeper into the water. It's like, what am I doing? I'm trying as hard as I can. Low-key burnout is when there just isn't enough wood to burn. Relationally, emotionally, physically, spiritually, and on a career and financial level. Sometimes, a lot of times, it's because you just didn't gather enough during the day. You get distracted. You procrastinate. You watch YouTube instead of working out. And you scrolled on TikTok instead of connecting with your husband and asking him how his day was. You talked with your friends rather than writing the paper. And you sit there in the cold by nightfall. You didn't gather enough wood, and the fire burns out, and you're like, man, what'd I even do? Sometimes it's because there's not enough wood in your life to burn. Like I said, sometimes you get to a campsite, and all the dead wood's been picked through, and there's simply not enough to burn. This happens in our job sometimes. You get this job, and it's what you wanted to do, and you get there, and there's just not enough work to do. And it's like, man, I moved across the country. I did this thing. I'm doing this stuff, and this job is just so empty. It's a relationship sometimes when there's not enough love to give. There's not enough wood to burn in that relationship, and you don't really know what to do. You're kind of trapped, and all day long, you know that your fire is going to burn out by the time you get home, and you're going to feel empty, lonely, and purposeless. You end up at a cold camp, no coals. You just dread your own life. Because you're just treading water. Most people who suffer from burnout, they suffer from a low-key burnout. It's by far the most common. Elon Musk is the type of guy that suffers from high-key burnout, 16 hours a day, 7 days a week. Low-key burnout. That's far more common. It happens from being emotionally dead, physically unhealthy, not making real progress, relationally empty and lonely. And this is what so many of us suffer with. You feel like you're working really hard, but if you feel burned out, one of the big ways to determine if it's a low-key burnout is just zoom out on your life for a moment. And I bet you can see lots of times where you've worked harder and felt better. Because the problem isn't that you're doing too much. The problem is something deeper. A great biblical example of burnout is this guy named Elijah. It's in 1 Kings chapter 19, verses 1 through 9. It'll actually be our key passage this week, probably next week too. I'd encourage you to turn in your Bibles there. You can use a digital Bible. I'll have it up on the screens. You can also use a paper Bible. That's what I've been into recently. And analog Bible is what we call it. But Elijah has a great job. It's similar to what a pastor does today. He holds the office of prophet, so a little bit different, a little bit more hardcore. And Elijah is leading a ministry that's actually doing really well. So his local ministry, what he's doing, his little congregation, his flock, he's slaying it. The problem is, nationally, in the nation of the northern kingdom, the nation of Israel, in the world of antiquity, the church is not doing well. And most of his prophet and pastor friends have been canceled, or in some cases, in many cases, actually murdered. So that's not good. So nationally, the church is not doing well, and something really similar to progressive Christianity called Baal worship is thriving in the northern kingdom of Israel. And lots of people who used to follow God are now kind of doing both, right? And we've seen this happen today. The Baal worshipers have begun really persecuting and murdering traditional worshipers of God. They're canceling them. They're saying, hey, you're a bigot and you're all this stuff and you're backwards and can't you get with it and hip wow with it and now and sin is okay and we don't really need to honor God with our lives and all this stuff. And if you don't agree with us, we're going to kill you, right? And it's rough. It's not going well, right? So it's bad. The nation is divided. And Elijah's personal ministry, like I said, it's doing really, really well. And he leads this big conference up on Mount Carmel, and thousands of people are there, and it's incredible, and tons of people turn back to God, and these prophets of Baal, they come there, and they try to stir things up, and they're doing lots of bad things, or mutilating people, and it's really messed up, and this is why, Elijah, the prophet, is not like a pastor. He ends up killing the Baal prophets, which is crazy. That's just what happened, and it's an incredible conference for everybody who's there. They're all like, wow, this is a powerful thing. We saw God move. The problem is in the greater context, it doesn't really make a dent. On a micro level, Elijah is succeeding, but on a big picture level, he's like, God's failing. Like, this doesn't feel good at all. I mean, God, what are you doing? My life feels pointless because no matter how hard I work, it feels like the church in our country is not thriving. People are turning away from God. Their faith is deconstructing. And it's like, what's the point? I tried as hard as I could. I'm at the height of my game, the top of my game, the best part of my ministry. Church isn't doing good. And then the government starts persecuting him. I mean, all over the Twitter and the Gram, they're delegitimizing what he's doing, and that's where we pick up in 1 Kings chapter 19, verse 1. The federal government, represented by King Ahab, says when Ahab got home, he told Jezebel everything. Jezebel's kind of like Mark Zuckerberg, right? Told the head of Facebook everything Elijah had done, including the way he killed the prophets of Baal. So Jezebel sent this message to Elijah: may the gods strike me down and even kill me if by this time tomorrow we've not killed you just as you killed them. And I don't know if you've ever had someone try and cancel you. I don't know if you've ever been flamed in a really public way. I have had it happen a couple times, and it's just a really maximum stress situation. You try to not care, but it feels like the walls are caving in. When we were building our church up in Hebron, I probably overreacted, but there was some stuff going on that was really overwhelming to me. And it was hard to not be consumed by it and to not feel like the world was crashing down around you. And this guy, Elijah, just got done with the biggest conference of his life. And it was amazing, but the church at large is still struggling. And now, after that great conference, after this great victory, after this great moment, all these people are trying to cancel him. And everyone on Twitter is saying, that Elijah, he's just a privileged Jew, and it's just Jewish privilege, and they're just doing this stuff and whatever, and it's just prophetic privilege. I mean, God just favoritizes him. He can't take credit for it. And they're calling him a bigot, and they're delegitimizing him. They're calling him unpatriotic, and, he's ruining the country and all this stuff, and what is a country without these things, and blah, blah, blah. They're calling him all this stuff, trying to cancel him. And this is what Elijah does, and you might relate to this. In verse 3, it says, Elijah was afraid. And I think that's a really common fear. At the base of low-key burnout is a little bit of fear. Like, I'm not going to make it. I'm trying as hard as I can, and you try to shut it out, but there's this underlying anxiety, like, I'm not going to make it. Like we're not, and you don't even think about the day after the day. It's just, you're running from this thing, right? He was afraid and he fled for his life and he went to Beersheba. That's an interesting town, but there's no beer there. In a town in Judah. And then he left his servant there and he went alone into the wilderness. And that's what we do when we're really burning out, right? We push people out of our life. We push our friends out of our life. We run away alone. We isolate. Even if they were our best friends, we just want to be alone. We want to be miserable. We want to just open up TikTok and be jealous of it. We want to look at Pinterest and see everybody's living room looks better than ours and whatever else. Traveling all day, he sat down under a solitary broom tree and he prayed that he might die. I've had enough, Lord, he said. Take my life, for I'm no better than my ancestors who have already died. Think about the context of this. Things are technically really good in his personal life and ministry, but he is burned out. And he's like, what's the point? All the other pastors are gone, God. Why am I even doing this? Like, I said the best I could possibly do. I laid it out. I mean, it was an incredible conference, Like, we had all these great guys leading worship. Chris Tomlin was there. I mean, we pulled it together. It was incredible. All these people came to the Lord, and yet the church nationally is why am I even doing this? And he gets home to his camp. He drops his keys on the bedside table. He says, I worked all day, and there wasn't enough fire. There wasn't enough wood. I'm cold. I'm empty, and I want to die. Wish I was dead. I don't want to wake up tomorrow. Have you ever been there? Have you ever prayed that prayer? I have. I had a major low-key burnout. My first job after college as a youth minister in Dallas, Texas. It was a Presbyterian church that had like squillions of dollars. Everybody there was super generous, super wealthy. Something like 4 of Dallas's 7 billionaires at the time were members of this church. And it wasn't like a particularly big church. It wasn't like a mega church, pretty small church by Dallas standards. It's about the size of this church here, right? So nothing huge, nothing like mind-blowing or anything like that. We, at our church right now, have 11 full-time equivalent staff members. That's what we operate with, 11 FTE, okay? This church had 130 staff members. It's like, wow, it's a lot of staff, right? Our youth group here operates with 1.5 full-time equivalent staff members for 130 to 200 kids a week. Their youth group that I worked in had the same number of kids and 11 full-time staff members. We had unlimited budget to go anywhere, to do anything, so many staff members. And I came out of college like, I'm going to preach the gospel. We're going to reach kids. It's just going to be amazing. I'm going to really can't wait to do a great work for Christ and his kingdom. And there was like nothing to do. It was like coming to a camp that people had already been at. The deadwood had already been picked. It was all already done. And I ran out of things to do. Like, I would meet with every single kid that there was in the whole ministry halfway through the first month. And it's like, well, I can't meet with them more. Like, I've already met with them all. Like, what else can I do? I wrote a, personal, letter to every kid, and I'm done. Like, there's nothing to do. And, a year into the youth ministry is doing fine. Maybe it had grown a little. It was a cushy job. But I just felt worthless. Like, what am I doing? This is my life. Like, I'm watching my life pass me by, and I'm not doing anything. My heart was cold, thirsty, hungry, and lonely. I'd come home every night feeling empty and afraid, like I hadn't done anything, even though I tried hard. And I remember reading about Elijah under that tree. And I wanted to die. I thought, me too. There just wasn't enough wood to burn. I felt like a failure, sitting at camp in the dark, in the cold, coming home at night, hungry, thirsty, and lonely. Have you ever been there? Today, the big question I want to ask is, how are you doing with burnout? Maybe you're not a youth director at a meaningless, cushy job. Maybe you're a mom raising kids alone, and you're working as hard as you can, and you're running from here to there, dropping them off everywhere, and your kids aren't turning out well, let's be honest, and your job isn't going well, and you're just treading water, maybe sinking a little bit, and you're like, God, what am I even doing? Maybe you're a guy with a job that you hate to pay child support, and you still can't see kids because even though you have arranged custody and visitation, every time you go and see them, there's some excuse. Somebody's sick. Here's the reason we can't do it. It's like, what am I doing? Like, I want to see them. Maybe you're a student who hates school because literally there's no one there who cares about you. Maybe you're 45 and you got a family that loves you, but you just feel so unfulfilled. How are you doing with burnout? Everybody talks about burnout, and in some senses it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. My goal in this series is not to create a bunch of burnout hypochondriacs. I just think there's a lot of people who are carrying a low-key burnout burden, and I want to address it. And normally what I do in a sermon is I'm like, here's the problem. Here's the solution. Jesus, and everybody's like, oh, that's great. I'm just going to do these things, and it's going to be awesome. But I don't think I can do that this week. as we were really looking at this issue, and I was looking, and what's interesting about the Bible is God includes several different recordings of different guys throughout history who have struggled with burnout. And I think it's super amazing that we have a God who understands it and loves it. Like, isn't it cool that God actually records it, and he doesn't blast it? He brings healing to it. And so I really want to examine the question deeper today. So I think for so many of us, this is the big deal, we're continuing with the functions of life, but the joy of life is gone. And that's ultimately burnout, isn't it? Where you're just going through the motions, and you haven't quit, you haven't done whatever. It's just the joy's gone. That's burnout. What I want to do is I want to talk about 11 signs of burnout from author and pastor Carey Nieuwhof. And I want to do this so that you can gauge where you're at. You know, you go through the 11, you say, man, I'm 5 for 11. I'm 8 for 11. I'm 11 for 11. I want you to think about these things and think about, do I struggle with these things? They're actually, I've got a QR code on the back of the pen holders on the seat backs in front of you at Hebron and at DeMont Wheatfield. And then I also have a paper copy going to you guys at the jail. But the hope is, after this, you'll be able to think, do I relate to this? And also there'll be a link in the description to those of you online. But I want you to go through this and think, how many of these do I relate to? 11 signs. Number one, you might be struggling with burnout if you find your passion dying. I have a tendency to roar at anything that I'm doing. It's just the way that I'm wired. But when I'm walking in burnout, I no longer care. You know, things that I used to really care about, I just don't care. I'm just going through the motions, you know, going to the lake, slalom skiing. You know, you don't care about the game. You don't care about winning the contract. You don't care about date night. You don't care about those things. You still do it. It's just the passion's gone. Second sign of burnout is you no longer feel the highs or the lows. I think feeling highs and lows is a natural thing. We all have ups and downs. Learning to manage those things is important. One of the big ways this manifests is empathy. When you're not in burnout, you should feel empathetic when other people have highs and lows. But when you're burned out, you don't feel it anymore. You don't care if someone has great news. And they come up to you and they say, hey, we're pregnant. And on the outside, you're like, that's great. You know, you do all the emojis with your face or whatever. You text or whatever else. That's great news. But inside, it's just flatline. You know, when somebody has a low, they come up to you and they're like, it's horrible, you know, cancer, whatever. And you're like, oh, that's awful on the outside. On the inside, it's just flatline. It feels like numbness. You know when your foot falls asleep and you can't feel anything except a few pricklies and tinglies and that's it? It's like that except with your heart, right? Number 3, little things make you disproportionately emotional. Here's what I mean by that. The actual emotion will vary, but it's a one-dimensional negative emotion, okay? All of the highs and lows are reduced to a one-dimensional negative emotion. Instead of feeling the full range of ups and downs, you just have one emotion. For me and for most men, it's anger. When you're dealing with a low-key burnout, you're a guy, it's just anything makes you have a nuclear meltdown. You're in traffic, and some guy, like 5 car lengths in front of you, slowly merges over with his turn signal. You're like, no, I can't believe that guy did that. Who does he think he is? Driving a Nissan Titan? You know, this is America. What are you doing? You know, you get mad, or you throw a tool across because whatever reasons and things, you know. This is metric. I can't even believe it's metric. Why not English Standard? This is America, you know, or you've got your kid who does something that's not that big a deal. You know, they spill a cup of coffee, and it's like, where do you think we are? I can't believe you spilled that cup. This is America. And it's like, what is making you mad all the time, right? For other people, for women, a lot of times it's sadness. You're just crying because of little things like, I forgot to turn on the dishwasher before work, and I just cracked. I can't believe they got my coffee order wrong. I was really waiting for this orange mocha frappuccino, and they did soy milk. Soy milk. You know, or, you know, you're just trying to find a parking spot, and you see the grocery store, and you go in the wrong door, and it was locked. And I walked into the glass, and it didn't. And now it's just my foundation, and it's the worst. You're numb. But you're also emotionally volatile in a negative way. 4th thing, everybody drains you. It's normal to have few people drain you. We all got some of them. But it's not normal to have everybody drain you. You know, when you just can't wait to get home for some just you and your phone time so you can brood and sit there and hate life and think about how everything's not going well, like that's your favorite part of the day, that's not good. Number 5, you're becoming cynical. You just sort of crave hearing the bad news. It's like your favorite time of the day is turning on Tucker Carlson or Don Lemon and sitting there letting them tell you about how bad the world is. It's like, yeah, it is so bad. You know, everybody's bad. You just don't trust people because you know they're going to let you down. Like, I can't try. I know they're going to let me down. Everybody's going to fail me. It's the way it is. Number 6, you might be struggling with low-key burnout when nothing satisfies you anymore. Fishing, sewing, stitching, organizing, hunting, winning, boating. It used to be what you lived for, but now a new house, a new kitchen, a big raise, a fantastic exotic trip. It's not that you don't care, it's that it's never enough. I mean, you're so numb, you can't wait, you hang your hat, and when I do this, and when I see this, and you get there, and you open up the doors, and you see it, and it's just empty, but you want more, and you still are envious of the others that have it, even though it gives you nothing. Number 7, a lot of people with low-key burnout can no longer think straight. This is where the midlife crisis affairs happen, right? I don't think a midlife crisis is because you're aging. It's because you have a low-key burnout. You reach this place in life where it's like, what's the point? Like, all these things I want, I still feel the same. This is where foolish choices come. You know, you buy the sports car you can't afford, or the motorcycle you can't ride, or you quit the job, or you bleach the hair. Don't bleach the hair. Please, I hope that never comes back. I hear it's coming back. You find another partner without thinking about the costs and destruction to your dreams, to your family, to your life, because you can't think straight. For me, it was dying. I remember fantasizing about dying. Now, it was only a bad year. It wasn't a bad life, but I couldn't think straight. And I thought it was the only escape. Number 8, your productivity is dropping. And this is a big sign of low-key burnout. You know, it's not that you're doing too much. It's that you're making what you have take too much time. Things that used to take minutes take hours, like responding to an email. It's like you just sit there staring at it. You're like, oh, I better get my Spotify playlist set right before I reply to this email. I better make sure to reply to these text messages, unrelated, whatever. And we just waste time because we're so miserable. And it's not that we have too much to do. It's that we have too much that we hate doing. We're easily distracted because we want to be distracted from our lives. Number 9, you're self-medicating. And people run to all kinds of things when they're in low-key burnout. People run to porn, alcohol, substances, endless partying, endless scrolling to zone out. That's a common one. Sometimes it's excessive working out. It's interesting. Or excessive dieting or obsession with overeating. Number 10, this is a big one for me. Of all the ones on here, this is the one I relate to the most, but you don't laugh anymore. And now, I don't really laugh often. I bet there's fewer than maybe 10 people in this whole church who have genuinely seen me belly laugh. And right now, I only laugh in intimate gatherings. It's like an intimate thing for me. And I laugh about once a week when I'm healthy, right? Once a week. Good laugh. In the depth of my burnout, I don't think I laughed for a full year. Like no belly laugh, nothing for a full year. I remember the first time I did it, coming out of that depression and burnout, it was like, what is this happening? What is my body doing? This is the weirdest thing. I was surprised by it. Number 11, last thing, and this is a big one. Sleep and time off no longer refuel you. And you sit there and you're like, I gotta get away. I mean, I just gotta get away. And you get away and you go on that trip and you're numb the whole time. And the day you come back, the second you come back, you feel worse or the same as you did when you left. There's no relief. And you immediately just think, what happened? Why didn't it work? You don't want to get out of bed. You don't want to do any of it. How many of these 11 marks do you struggle with? In other words, how are you doing with burnout? I've got a QR code, like I said, on the pen holder in front of you, and a link in the description to this talk. It's got some discussion questions. But really, one of the big goals today is for us to take an inventory, because for the rest of the series to work out the way we want it to, we need to really figure out where we're at with burnout. If it's 5 or 6, it's something to think about. If it's 9 to 11, like, we got to do something. And the really good news is, no matter where you're at, I want you to know you don't have to live the rest of your life this way. You don't have to quit your job or quit your marriage. And I want you to know that death is not the escape you're looking for. And you have a God who understands this. Church is a place where no one's perfect and everyone's welcome. And we have a God, a perfect God, who understands sin and depravity in the world. And he uses broken, burned out people like us and like Elijah to transform the world for the better. Check out 1 Kings again, chapter 9, verse 4. It says, then he went alone into the wilderness, traveling all day, and he sat down under a solitary broom tree. And he prayed that he might die. I've had enough, Lord, he said. Take my life, for I'm no better than my ancestors who have already died. I totally relate to this guy. Have you ever said that prayer? I have said that prayer many, many times. And my favorite part about this story isn't that I can relate to Elijah. I remember reading that story, broken in my bed in Dallas, Texas, praying that I would die. And it's this next part that really speaks to my heart. It says, then he lay down and he slept under the broom tree. But as he was sleeping, God sent an angel and touched him and said, get up and eat. And he looked around, and there beside his head was some bread baked on hot stones and a jar of water. So he ate and he drank and he lay down again. First off, I want you to know that we don't serve a God who looks at you and says, if you're not perfect, then you're out. We serve a God who cares for us. When we confess our hurt and our pain and our sorrow to him, he sends his Spirit to comfort us, and to carry our burdens with us. It says, then the angel of the Lord came again and touched him and said, get up and eat some more. The journey ahead will be too much for you. So he got up and he ate and drank. The food he gave him was enough to strengthen him to travel 40 days and 40 nights to Mount Sinai, the mountain of God. Then he came to a cave where he spent the night. I want you to know that in the midst of your pain, there's a God who sees you and cares for you. And obviously, Elijah is still not healed at this point, but in the very next few verses, Elijah will have the most powerful encounter with God of anyone in the whole Old Testament, which is kind of remarkable. And God cares for him, and God actually nourishes him. And in his weakness, God shows Elijah who he is most powerfully. The most powerful encounter that anyone in the whole Old Testament of the Bible has with God is with a burned-out, broken guy who wants to die. I think that's remarkable. But that's something we'll talk about next week. Because what I really want you to get today is that the first step in beating burnout is admitting that we're burned out. And I think that's what Elijah did, and God was not angry at him for doing it. What did God do when Elijah admitted that he was burned out? God cared for Elijah. I want to challenge us to take an inventory, to talk with our family, to talk with our kids about it. And I think especially in the youngest generation, I mean, everybody was like, man, I'm so excited for this series. We really need this series. I think so many in younger generations deal with low-key burnout, just going through the motions. And, I have never been a white male. I have faced issues of discrimination in my life, especially as a younger man, especially in the great state of Minnesota and the city of Minneapolis. But I think about young white men in our community, and I have so much compassion for the discrimination that you feel, because I can't imagine coming home every night and pulling out your phone and just seeing line after line that says nothing that you achieve, any modicum of success that you have in your life is simply because of some privilege that you have, and you can't take credit for it, and your life is basically worthless. And I think about my son, I think about people in our community, and look, I know the pendulum swings in all directions for people of many colors and backgrounds, but we're just dealing with generations in crisis, where people are told everywhere, no matter their background, no matter their color, no matter their race, that they can't win. First off, I want you to know that we have a God who doesn't judge people by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. And secondly, I know that this young generation carries a burnout burden that is super, super great. So I want to challenge families, communities, friends, parents to really take an inventory of this. Because I think those of you with young adult children, you'll be shocked to learn the depth and breadth of the burnout they're carrying. And I don't have time this week to go into it, but next week and the week after, we're going to talk about beating burnout. And I've got some great messages for you about this, but if you're down and hurting, I want you to know fundamentally that we have a God who heals. And if you have prayed and are wishing that your life would end, I want you to know that that is not the escape you're looking for. And it won't be the end of your story. In Christ, your best days are ahead of you. I can't wait to talk about it next week. Also, if you're not a Christian, I would challenge you to admit not just that you need help, but there is a higher power, the God in heaven, who can restore you to sanity. Something doesn't come from nothing. Intelligent design doesn't come from no intelligence. We know that God is real. It turns out that people who follow Christ can find help and healing in him at much greater levels than any other subgroup of Americans within our society today. So if you want help from God today and you're willing to give your life to him, I just want you to know there's always an opportunity to follow him. You can text I'm in to 474747. And for all of us today, I can't wait for the rest of this series. The first step to beating burnout is to admit that we're burned out. As we close, I want to ask you to stand to your feet, and I'd like to pray for our church. God in heaven, I thank you for each person at all of our locations that you brought here today. I thank you that you are a God who cares about us. In the midst of our suffering and trials and pain, I know that you care about us. God, I pray that in this series and through these messages, by the power of your gospel and your transcendent truth in your word, Lord, you would give a new generation of people victory over burnout, that you would ignite a steadfast fire in our hearts to love you, to follow you, to trust you, and to believe that the best is yet to come. Would you give us a new, revitalized vitality in our life, Lord, because of this series, because of your word, because of your gospel. It's in Jesus' name we pray. All God's people said, amen and amen. Let's sing this last song together. that song. That's a good song. Well, obviously, next week, I mean, you got to get part 2 of the message. You know, I met some friends from Dallas. You better extend your trip a little bit longer because you only got part 1. What about the solution? You know what I mean? And Texas is lame compared to Indiana. Everybody tells me that. You know, everybody's like, if I could live in Indiana, that's really like, It's like Florida, California, Texas combined. You know what I mean? Like pretty soon it's going to be the Silicon Valley. You know, so that's great without all the problems. Okay, big things. Okay, this is a big thing to me. I just like anniversaries. We're celebrating some anniversaries. Put that slide up. Ray and Pat Brown, 50 years. Come on. Ken and Joyce Naniga, 60 years. Are you kidding me? You guys have been married for more years than I've been alive. Quite a few, actually. Quite a few. So anyway, that's fantastic. And then Joyce's sister, Jean Ann and John, they've been married for 66 years. So, you know, that's a big deal, too. But I can't wait to celebrate your 70th. We're going to do fireworks. John and Jean Ann, we're going to do fireworks when you're doing 70. My time's up. Discussion questions. Don't forget about those. That's coming up. And then the best part about church, it's not the message, it's not the music, it's the people of God together. And I think this is the first week of Strack and Van Til Donuts. And I'm not sure if we have cronuts or not, but I'm told that we still might be able to do that. So that's a big celebration. We talked about it last week. Make sure to try one. Let's team it up on three. Everybody, hands in, team on three. 1, 2, 3, team!
Team, thank you so much for joining us today. And as always, if you want to take a next step in faith, we would love to walk alongside of you. If you want to learn how to follow Jesus, you want to choose to follow Jesus, we would love for you to text I'm in to 474747, and we will follow up with you in the next 24 hours. And then lastly, we have Trunk or Treat coming up on Halloween night from 5 to 7 at both of our locations. We would love for you to join us there. Thank you again for joining us today, and I cannot wait to catch you next week. Bye, family.